We're live. Is that working? I'm going to press we're
I
live on
think we're
Twitter
live.
to make sure people realise we're here. And the great joy of actually streaming means that I've actually got this window. I've got the window open so I can see myself reflected back in an exciting mess here. Hello, everyone. Me and Stephanie are here. Will anyone else join us? We're not sure. Probably not. We're being pretty chill. I have a bottle of random cider I got for my birthday, and you have some passata.
I have some Korean black raspberry red wine.
Yeah.
That's super fancy and that's 15 degrees. But it's super good. Honestly, it's like syrup.
This is Chrissy got for my birthday like a variety of like bottled stuff because I've got back into drinking cider for reasons which are too complicated to explain. Maybe I'm just hungry for apple. Congratulations, Stephanie, for finishing Dye.
Yay! I'm still not sure if I'm super happy or super sad, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, it's different. It's kind of different for me than you, isn't it? Because I've you know, I've done it before, and not everyone's different. But it's also like aggressively. I've done here's a big project, and I've come down from it, and it took me like the entire year to warm up towards it. Whilst this is a load of firsts for you. It's like your first big ongoing comic. It's your first time you've done a create your own book like this. Like, and it's it's your biggest, longest piece of single work as well. I mean, how have you sort of like come down from it?
I'm not sure yet because usually when I finish a very big job, just going on the road, as you know, and with COVID, I haven't been able to do that, so there hasn't been a clean break. But I'm going to Chicago in a month, so I think it's gonna do the trick. And I still have to go and see some friends here and there. My parents too. I haven't seen them for 2 years now.
Oh wow, really that long? Oh no, that's a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah. Well, we don't see that much usually. We see each other that much, but with like I broke my leg, and then whatever happened happened,
Yeah.
and it's just been a few crazy years.
Yeah, especially like you had a really the level of cursedness in Die is something to think about. Like, do you want to talk about breaking the horrificness of trying to break your leg and deal with that, or is that too emotional to talk about? Do you
No,
want to like
no,
share
it's
with the
really
readers the whole because that's
yeah.
early Die in my head is always connected to the horror show of your leg situation in Japan. Like, if you want to
It
share that,
was
that'd be
my
great.
break. I was on a break. I was supposed to take a month in Japan. I spent a week in Tokyo, and then I was supposed to spend like a month in Kyoto. And the first day, like the first night, I went out with my friend, and the day after, I woke up in the morning, and I just like got down the stairs and fell down the stairs and broke my leg. And so I spent like 3 weeks in the hospital there. And I remember when I had surgery the day after, we were supposed to do like we were reprinting, I don't remember which issue. And I was still with morphine on my arm. And I was still doing like very quick changes on the cover for the reprint. We were lucky it was clean because I couldn't see straight at that moment.
I was saying like the level of is there a drug influence in your work? Yes, our morphine drip, is an important moment in the creation of Die. Oh man, that was hell. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I've got to say, like, do you miss drawing the characters?
No, because I know during the conventions I'm gonna have to do a lot of commissions of them. So I know they will still be there.
Mm.
Maybe I will just do like we should do a like collection like summer edition. Change the costumes for the next season for a few years or something. That could be great.
Yeah, it'd be nice. I mean, honestly, it's like I mean, you're doing the RPG work as well, though, so you're sort of heading towards that. And while we're not primarily using the characters from the comic to illustrate the RPG, I'm sure some new art from them will fit in there as well.
Yeah, they might make an appearance. I would love that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm excited because I am completely planning to do some comic. Obviously, when I say I mean we. Are planning to do some comic. I'm going to break it to you now, Stephanie. No, as in doing some comic pages, like, you know, the classic thing in the RPG of you have the introduction fiction.
Mhm.
Like, and so rather than doing that in prose, obviously we do that in a comic. And I would also like to, as a little side note, is that since this bottle's slightly larger than normal and I'm drinking out of it, it makes me look like I'm like really going through a difficult time. So I might try to find a glass and start drinking from that instead. Um, but
It's apple
yeah,
juice.
I feel shameful. As I say, like I'm going to ask you a question,
Oh.
and then leave you, and I'm going to run off and actually get stuff. Get a clean glass to avoid me feeling like some kind of strange randomness. I've also
Uh,
discovered that on StreamYard, which we're using, we can actually we can just like show up pictures, which is very exciting. Sorry, as in
oh,
show up questions. Um, here's a good one. Steve Dillon asks this.
the moldboard.
I think mood board. I think might be
Oh
the
yeah, I
typo.
know, but I
I'm gonna
think
leave mold board. Actually, a mold board's a really good. The idea is basically some kind of
lighting.
chaos thing. I'm going to leave you here, Stephanie, and answering this question, and I'm going to get a glass.
Oh, help. Oh, so what was the moldboard for the
You're
stereotype?
fine, Stephanie. You've got it.
Yeah, you know that English is not my primary language, right? I'm not really sure I'm doing this correctly. So, for the issue, for every issue, basically, I had a folder full of concept art for a lot of RPGs and video games, mostly a lot of Arthur Rackham, Billy Bean. If you don't know Billy Bean, you should really look at. It's a Russian painter. I'm talking about Billy Bean again. I know. I'm just telling it again and again. Yeah. So yeah, Billy Bean is a Russian painter from the early 20s, early 30s maybe, and most of the flashbacks in Die are inspired by his style. It's a huge inspiration for me. There was a lot of John Ho too, but basically a lot of random pictures coming as I was typing, like concept art, you know. Anything interesting, I would put it on the shared folder.
Like it's always Die basically runs up a Dropbox. Like we use a
Mhm.
Dropbox to sort of keep all the stuff organized. And I can always tell when Stephanie's like doing research because like pictures just start appearing on my hard drive. So I'm just like looking at what's Stephanie got her mind on today. And yeah, it's
Yeah.
quite fun. Yeah. And
Yeah,
it's like
usually
the Dropbox is just like occasionally mentioned. Sorry, Stephanie, you were saying.
yeah, sometimes I just upload a lot of them, you know. Suddenly you have like 200 coming, like,
Yeah.
and I never praise them.
I've got some questions as well as the ones in the chat. I've got asked the Die Discord, which is linked on the website if you don't know it. Here's a good one for you. Paper Curse asked, which character's wardrobes would you most like for yourself in real life, Stephanie?
No. Like, oh no, that's not true. Like the Fool has certainly a few things that I myself possess. I have a lot of leather jackets. I have the thing called sukujan. Sukujan are souvenir jackets from Japan, and they are heavily embroidered on the back and on the side too. And I have a few of them, so I could basically cosplay as Chuck. And I was a red hair for most of my life.
I must say, emotionally, I mean, you've often said this in interviews that Chuck is the character you feel closest to or most
Yep.
like. And I'm still slightly scared by that, but it does excite.
For a while, I thought you were too very close to Chuck.
Like,
For
I must say,
other reasons than mine.
yeah. Also, like Chuck is a device to put every single bad writer story you have. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of things like of Chuck are stuff which oh, I wouldn't say thinly veiled stuff about me, because it's certainly not that, but certainly tweaked versions of things I've heard about writers. And I don't mean like friends or anything like that. Just kind of like, oh yeah, this is kind of the awful shit that writers do when they are entirely ethically broken. I mean, say with Chuck, the way I describe Chuck is like Kid with Knife from Phonogram. Like Kid with Knife is a delightful character, but if Kid with Knife had Cole's career somehow, so like basically, you know, Kid with Knife somehow fluked into basically being like a B or C list writer or whatever, and he would end up a bit like that. So yeah, Chuck was a lot, you know, and in some ways he's like the emotional backbone of part of the story.
You know, there is this issue, I think it's issue 7 maybe, where Chuck is talking about his life, and somebody tells him there was a party, and when you get out it was like the party was over. And we actually were together at a party once, like general comic meetup, and it was very early days of Die. I don't even think we even published something. So basically nobody knew me, but everybody knew you. And you were like going through the room, and if you could see it from like the setting, you could have seen the moves around you. Like everything was just moving around you. That was really fascinating to see.
It's weird and creepy. Like one of the things I was based, I mean, most of it, like the one bit of Chuck I did kind of lift for myself was a bit like that, because there was this time I was at you know me, I love karaoke. I love like big, and I love pop music. And like at the peak of Wickdiv, there was this awful, like I say awful moment, because it wasn't really like, and I was in a dark place for a lot of Wickdiv. I was emotionally in a very bleak place. And it's a big room full of karaoke, and it's like, it's not like they're passing the mic. It's a party. People are throwing down, they're just passing the mic around. It's something like incredibly stupid and a great joy. And I'm enjoying it normally because I'm all about that kind of moment of losing yourself in music. Anyway, I go outside to steal a cigarette of a friend, and that says how bad a place I was. If I'm smoking, it's usually a bad sign, because I don't smoke. And as I come back again, somebody, and I can't remember who, but said to me, "Oh, Kieron, it was so funny. The second you left the dance floor, everyone stopped doing karaoke," and that was like literally heartbreaking, because it made me, I cannot trust any interaction with anyone I know. You know what I mean? Like what I think is a genuine human experience, I cannot now write about, because it's not, because you are influencing the situation. Must be the other bit. So that was one of the things I was thinking about there. But I was specifically thinking about the you know, that kind of that you described happening with me. I saw that happen to Grant Morrison. There was this there was it was a comic drinks in London. They have them every like month. And Grant, I've been going on and off like 15 years now. And Grant, they've never turned. You know, Grant's only turned up once. And Grant turns up at the bar, and I think Fraser Irving was there. So Fraser goes over to talk, and so this tight bubble of Grant and Fraser and a couple of other people. Then other bubbles of conversation stand up and start gathering around. And it's literally, so I'm sitting in the corner. When I forget who I'm with, I'm just being, watching this happen and going, what the hell is wrong with people? And Grant finishes their drink and leaves. And then everyone just slowly sits down again. And it's like, oh my God. I mean, writers on, I mean, like, it's just weird. Like, and I'm a Labrador, so I never notice. Okay, I very rarely notice this kind of stuff. But yeah, that's things like, you draw from even a character as awful as Chuck, you're drawing on some quite personal stuff. Right.
I think the more famous you become, the more evident it becomes. Very, very often people ask me, have you met Stan Lee?
I just missed my mouth. I do have a drinking problem, as the old joke goes. Sorry, you were saying about Stan Lee.
This kind of drinking problem is not so much of a problem for your closest. Yeah, so very often people ask me if I have ever met Stan Lee, because this is basically the only comic guy people know when they don't do comics. And each time I tell them the story, like I once was, like, I think it was my first Comic Con in New York. And there I just heard a noise, coming, like a lot of noise. And I saw Stanley. He was still like quite valiant, and he was walking very very fast, and behind him was a crowd of at least 50 people just running after him, and he was laughing, he was totally acknowledging that it was happening and like living his best life. But that was just weird, you just hear a rumor and suddenly there is a train passing like this. It was like Brazil, the movie Brazil, when
Yeah.
in the strange building, and you only have like noises of people. Like, that was just weird.
Yeah, my first ever San Diego, I had a similar thing. Stanley passed my table within 5 minutes of me arriving there. And it was a bit like, oh, well, I can go home now. I've had my San Diego experience. This is how it operates. Yeah, it's striking. Like, anytime you meet people who are like, quote unquote, really famous,
Mm-hmm.
it is just, you notice the weirdness of all that. Like, even like the low level of micro fame, like, like no one cares about who I am outside of a comic convention. And like in the same way, like we can
Yeah.
walk down the street and our life are absolutely fine, but it's weird, and it's alienating. Yeah, not in a, I mean, trust, it's not, how to phrase it. There are far worse things to be, and I'm certainly not complaining in that way. But
But
it is
it's
weird.
it's genuinely a weird experience, especially in comic books, because basically some of us are very famous, but only for comic books fans.
Mm.
So, when I was only doing French comics, one of my first signings, I was in a very big library, and there was nobody. Like most of the books I sold them to the employees of the place. That was just so weird. And suddenly there were two very young guys, maybe 17, 16-ish, and they came to me and like, "Hey, miss, are you famous?" Like, well, if you meet somebody who knows me, well, for him, maybe I'm famous. And that's really the point in doing comics, which is
Yeah,
sometimes very weird, I think.
yeah. I remember when me and Jamie went to we were at the Winter Soldier premiere in London, like, and this is, which was funny. But like we were going down the red carpet and we end up signing somebody who did know us, asked us hey, Kieron, Jamie, come over, and we did, obviously. Um,
Hmm.
but then a few people there then presumed we must be somebody. So this this little 5-year-old kid was asking for a signature. I'm like, okay, we're doing, we're not gonna say we weren't anyone. But it's like, no, because the kid wants a signature, and not feel good about having from anybody. But yeah, that was weird. Yeah,
Yeah,
this is
I go in Asia a lot, right? And when
mm,
you sign in Japan, and I haven't signed in Korea, but in Singapore or in China, each time somebody buys you something, they want a picture with you. You get used to that. It's just
mm.
so weird, Like everything you sell, you have a picture with the, and after that they're gonna put them on internet, but they're gonna hide their faces. It's just a strange experience sometimes.
That's fascinating. So the one like national difference I've spotted, I've done like one con in Mexico, and the con in Mexico was great, but like everybody wanted to shake your hand.
Yeah.
Like, and it was like, and obviously I'd never been to Mexico before, so there's a lot of people who are Marvel fans down there who've never like met me. So a lot of people were queuing, and my hand was crushed across. Not that people were being hard handshakes, but like by about the end of the second day, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I've got to introduce fist bumps. So I introduced fist bumps in this way. But like, yeah, it's all interesting in terms of like what people want, and it's I mean, this is basically what Wick did, was an entire comic about like what the totemic nature of our relationship with the people who
Mm.
create the art we love. Yeah, there's a lot going on. Shall we answer a question? I'm gonna
Yes.
start go. I'm gonna start. I'm actually just gonna go down and do them roughly in order. And so, this has been so much more personal than I thought it was. We've just gone deep in as an, oh yeah, I'm alienated and we're afraid of people's response to human contact. Anyway, Eric asks, that is totally one of my favourite covers of yours, by the way, Eric's icon.
Oh, yeah.
Hello,
That
any
one
math?
is a reference to a French book. In French, it's called L'écume des jours.
Hmm.
Don't. I know I looked it up in English, but I don't remember. But basically, it's a story of a guy whose wife has we'll say the name of the water lily. Is it water lily? The flowers growing on.
Yeah.
where his wife has a water lily growing from her lungs, and the story is told as she really has one, but it's just a metaphor for she has a cancer, I think. And this one is a direct reference to the book, actually.
Awesome. But weirdly, I'm going to embarrass my brother now. Like you've just told me that's how our cat died. Obviously, when we were a kid, we had a cat called Benny. And I don't think that's a password anywhere, anyone, by the way. What is your pet's name or whatever? Our cat, and it was a fairly vicious tomcat, but he got cancer and died. And the way they explained to us was like a plant grew in its throat and he couldn't breathe, and we had to put him to sleep. And obviously that's quite a beautiful way of describing what cancer is to a child. And I listened to it as a child, and of course later I thought, oh, it was a metaphor for cancer. My brother, however, never realized that, and was basically all the way into his 20s when it was one of his standard anecdotes. He would be in bars and telling people, oh yeah, a plant grew in my cat's throat, we had to put it to sleep. And it was that moment when he went, oh yeah, because you don't question anything from your childhood. But yeah, it is a beautiful image. Anyway, to answer the question, are any masters you conceived of but never got to show in the comic?
No, not me. Maybe you did.
I think I've mentioned a couple, maybe, but the thing is that there are 20 masters, and it's almost like I do have a list of them, but it's never actually solid until we actually say it. That's one of the reasons why we don't say it. But there's certainly
we'll draw them in a sequel. Who knows?
Yes. It's there's another question down the line about, I mean, Dai is left open, you know what I mean? So there's always room for more if we wanted to do more. But but I think there's actually ones we haven't drawn. It's the Weishwitz brothers. So the Weishwitz father and son, the people who invented Kriegspiel, as in the Prussian Eternal Prussia. They are the masters of Eternal Prussia, and we as good as say that in the comic, but we don't actually show them. So they're the ones I would love to see how you do the Master of Eternal Prussia. These kind of careerist minor nobles in Germany. There's something I think I describe them as the ghosts in the machine in my note. But they're the one I'll mention. But that'll be fun.
Them for the RPG though.
Yeah, it's we'll do I'm pretty sure we'll end up doing a drawing of them because it's a haunting idea because it's a really sad story in lots of ways.
Yeah. Also, it's a good thing that we do them now because I was always a bit frustrated. I didn't have more time to really think about the concept, even though I was quite happy about what we turned out with. But it could be more interesting to have more time to see what we could do with them.
It's always, more time is always a thing because this job is, it's done at an incredible pace. I mean, died a lot of preparation time, but still, we have so much invention on every page. I always think of that bit in issue 6 where you said, hey, can I draw a giant robot that Angela's sitting on? And I go, sure. And it's I guess we've got giant robots now. Which is fine, that's what we want.
Yes.
Okay, to answer this question, did you get any closer to the answer? Have I been beholden to my teenage games, and am I still stuck there? If you had in the origin of the series, this is a kind of reference. My original kind of moment was, did part of me disappearing? And it's specific. I never actually said teenage games. I said fantasy full stop. As in, my life has been about video games and music because why I like music. It's all a very similar reason why I like games, and how much my life has been thrown into art, as an obsession over art, and how much has that stunted me. I mean, that's a question that's in Phonogram a lot. As Seth Bingo, I believe, he eventually says people over things. And that's a very that's a rejection of that. And of course, that you have to reject it implies that perhaps at one point you didn't reject it. I think the end of Die might explain where I've ended up, because it's I'm always about the upside and downside of your relationships with fiction. And I'm the kind of regrets I've had a few. Anyone who says I've got no regrets, I don't understand, because it's I regret everything. I regret not, I regret not holding the door open for somebody. I mean, that kind of and and I'll think about that later in the day. No, a regret is just a vague awareness. So yeah, I've certainly got regrets about how my life is impacted based upon my obsession over fantasy. At the same time, I'm very aware of how much it's given me as well. And being able to hold both those things in your head, the good and the bad together, is kind of where I've ended up, I think, with Die. Because it's actually, I don't want to spoil the end in that way, but like it's explicitly about your relationship with fantasy is yours, and it can, you tell me what that means. Does that make sense, Stephanie?
Yeah, it's like living two lives in a certain way. You have your inner life and your real life, whatever that is. Both. I know that for me, I daydream a lot. But yeah, I daydream. But
we all do, Stephanie. It's the job, but I do. I do something.
I'm very happy that I can't dream actually, because the few times I've been able, or like I remember that I dreamt, I thought it was exhausting, and because my imaginary life is already very present in my life, and it's like having a third one. The second one is already heavy to wear, and third one is like I don't know if dreams are important in your process. I know a lot of writers use them. For me, I just think it's exhausting. It's like having a hangover days and days on, because it's like after a big party, and during the day after, you're just having like bribes, like parts of it coming back to you. It's like, what? It's like, and it's almost real. I really hate dreaming. I'm really happy I don't.
I dream a lot. I mean, it's like a lot, and it's not use. I mean, I've had a handful of useful things from dreams. Like one of the core original phonogram ideas came from a dream, but mostly it's just nonsense. It's just utter nonsense. And I still get, I get a lot of stress dreams, and it's always kind of. Actually, my favourite, the classic "I've not revised for an exam" stress dream. Like I get that. As in, it's always about. It's never at school. It's always at degree level. And my favourite one was I'm just having the dream. Oh my god, I'm gonna fail the degree. That's awful. And then I'm like, but literally in the dream, I stop and go, wait a sec. You've got a career, your successful career as a writer. Fuck it. And then I wake up, and it's literally my other part of the brain went, no, Kieron. Who cares about this shit? You're fine. And I do quite like the idea of my subconscious sorted it out. But I had that dream again this week, and I did actually try that solution. But my subconscious came back at me saying something like, but just think about how much your parents wanted you to do this degree. So my brain found another way to make me guilty in the dream to stop me leaving. Sneaky.
It's so crazy for me to hear that, because, as I say, I don't dream. Or I don't dream a lot, because I certainly do, but I just don't remember. Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. And like the few times it happened, it was always very different things. So I was feeling like I was like taking a sitcom in the middle of the season. I had no idea what was happening. But at least it wasn't the same thing over and over. That would be very frustrating.
But it's like, it's not the same thing. It's more the same scenario. It's not like, I mean, it's always in like elements and it's mashed together. But yeah, it's interesting.
And in your dream, you're always surprised. That's the worst.
It is. It is. I can't tell. Must admit, there's one dream I don't want to actually say because it's slightly. When we finish, ask me about my dream and I'll tell you it. I can't tell you this one because I've realised it's slightly too industry based, and I'd rather not say that. Anyway, question by JW. Was there a conscious decision to keep other fools and Neo off stage, or did you just lack space for them, giving their other plot and character arcs? Mainly the latter, in that kind of it's the story is told mainly for the perspective of R6, so it's kind of like, okay, what can we get away with, and what do we want to say, etc. Yeah. I'm sort of frowning to thinking of as an exception, but yeah, I think fools were less useful than Neo. I must admit, there's quite a lot I want, in terms of story ideas I want to do down the line. I've got a lot I want to do with Neo, as in there's a whole region which basically is Neo based. So Stephanie, you can get her cyberpunk Ghost in the Shell on, basically.
Nice. Big towers.
Is obviously you're at the moment, Stephanie, you're drawing other Neos and Fools for the RPG. How is that for you, drawing like other Neos and Fools and stuff? How are you finding that?
It's a bit weird because for the series, I really put them in different cases. Like we've seen a lot of dictators, but they were in-game dictators, so I gave them a uniform.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure. It's difficult to think about it right now because it's very different. Because we are creating a new cast with unique characters. They cannot have uniforms, even though it's still kind of a uniform, because once you adhere to like a stereotype, you still have a uniform in a way,
Yeah.
So they still have to be relatable, but still unique.
It's interesting. It's like one of the things about the RPG is like all the worlds. It's very about making the world your own. So every game of die will be themselves. But you doing the uniform for the dictator. Okay, me doing the thinking about the dictator. Okay, how could dictators work in Angria if they're licensed? And that led to all that thinking. Then you did the design, which gave it like that. And there's an ability in the game, which is called Live from the Witch Trials, which happens to every dictator at level 4. Which is like, okay, the character is now notorious enough that, frankly, people want to hunt down and kill them because that's what they do to dictators. Why have you not been killed? And there's like a variety of options, one of which is you've joined an organization which has certain strictures. In other words, you have to have a uniform. You have to be, and in other words, you define what that actual organization is. But like, there's 2 other methods, as in there's 2 other reasons why you may not be hunted down and killed. But that's kind of like for me, that's like, I found really interesting how the comic inspires think, okay, what does that look like? And it's not just how do you do it, because joining the one guild of dictators is boring, but how can you take what's interesting about Dictators Guild and turn it into something which everyone can make their own? Yeah. Anyway, Sean Dillon asks, how much of the geopolitical situation of the world, not to mention COVID, affects how the book ultimately concluded? I would say not at all. Because it's one of these things like I just they were going to come back in 2020 or whatever, and then you would write the world that's there. And of course, it's influenced how he did it, and it was really weird to write it, and also very weird to say the world ends in 2020. But doesn't it? Yeah, I think Stephanie's going to agree with me on this. I think that how much it affected the book is out of the. It's not the story that influenced; it's the production of the comic because we slowed down. It was just harder for us to do work, wasn't it? So like that's the real effect, I think, Stephanie. Yeah.
Yeah, that was just weird. I know that you were more able to work than me, but for the first lockdown, I just I was blanking at my computer all day long. After a while, I just dropped. I could that was so unhealthy for me. I felt so guilty and so unable to work in the same time. Usually guilt helps me to work, but this time not at all. Like, okay, I'm gonna do yoga and watch TV now.
Yeah, it's hard. I'm also like, I slowed down. I thought I was maybe about 80% or maybe 75% of what I normally would be. But like all the artists I work with were like less than 50%. So like, I was fine. It's one of those things where like my slower speed was okay. Well, I think Dan was probably the only artist, Dan Morrow, who didn't slow down. And of course, he's doing 2 books at once because Dan is a superhuman. I have no idea how he works as quickly as he does.
I have a few writer friends who they worked a lot during the. They actually liked it. Like maybe they were living in the countryside or something.
Yeah, it didn't change my life that much, but like it's just the emotional, the level of emotional work and cognitive load and all that,
Because when you do a creative job, you take quite a while to find the way it works for you, because you're your own employer in some way. You have to find like a routine. Really, it's quite hard, to be honest. And when the world changed that much and suddenly you couldn't go out, especially for me, as I usually work in the outside office, it's part of my routine. I get up in the morning and I take my 10-20 minutes to take my bike and go to the office. And then when I'm there, I know I'm there to work. My everything is there, and I don't see anything else. So being stuck at home with nobody else to see to give me a sense of time, it just lost me. Yeah.
There's a lot. There's a
Yeah.
lot. Jay asks, this is a quite quick answer. Does the RPG mean that you can't draw a line in the die in quite the same way you could with other projects? Also, yay RPG and Rook, Roman and Deckard, who are awesome. The short answer is, like Stephanie, I've sort of implied that like we may do a sequel, or we may do, because it's like we created die to be a device in the same way Phonogram was a device to talk about music. Like die is a device to talk about fantasy, and especially because part of the die RPG is all the games are canon. Every single game of die is part of die, as anyone who's read issue 17 will know. So like, yeah, I think we haven't drawn an line under it in the same way. As much as if we never do any more die ever again, it's still fine. But it's also open, and that's the kind of like the RPG is both an invitation to the world, but it's also an invitation. Die is an invitation to me and Stephanie to do more. Yeah.
Yeah, but the book is over. But
Also, it is done.
I still have the feeling that we're not totally done with the characters. I have the feeling that some of them might come back. For you,
speculation, Stephanie Hands.
yeah. I don't know. Maybe it's because I haven't taken a clean break, but I have this feeling that it's not totally done, even though the book is done.
Yes. An actual practical question from James. Stephanie, will you bring any die covers as prints or posters to C2E2?
Yes.
Will you? Okay. How many will you bring?
Oh, I usually take 15 of each, but I'm trying to find a printer, a local printer in Chicago to do oversized prints of. I would like to do the issue 19 cover in oversize. That would be nice.
Yeah, issue 19. We've talked about this before, but issue 19 is absolutely one of my favorites. That is true. Alexander Lockton said something nice about Ash, but I'm not going to show the question because it's not a question, it's something nice. Jerry says, any plans to release a big book of puns, Kieron?
You should.
I've been talking about this years. Actually, every time I delete my Twitter quite regularly, I back it up first. So all my terrible puns are backed up somewhere on my hard drive. I don't know where. But it is definitely a possibility. And I'm like, most of them just deserve burning and purging. It's kind of like, here's the weird thing about my puns is I've deliberately made some of them worse. It's like, I could have made them funnier, but instead I've made them more awkward and less funny and slightly more annoying. And it's like, it's such a weird writing challenge.
You should do a pocket book, small enough to be put in a back pocket and just give them to selected people during cons. I like you. Take this.
Honestly, that's not bad. Honestly, that's what when I first met Al Ewing, he did his original zines he did were like an A4 piece of paper folded up like that, and with a comic written on every sort of sheet of like this, and he just gave them out manually, photocopied them, gave them out, and they were great. Al's really funny. You know what I mean? You might I've got some in a box here, and I'll dig them out. Ultimate Future Shock, that was a great one.
I only met him once during karaoke, and I thought it was the most hilarious guy ever.
He's so fun. His karaoke's are amazing. What did he sing?
I don't remember, but it was just legendary because he was always choosing this very sweet and sugary kind of song, a very very pop song, and always singing with very very low voice, in monotone. low voice. That was hilarious. I almost peed myself.
It's so funny. First karaoke I ever did with Al was like my first New York Comic Con, and it was a party. I think Jamie and sort of other people had arranged it in a bar, and he was the first person who sang, and he sang "Born to Run." Big, I need that doing the voice down here because Al's basically like Treebeard. He's got that kind of vibe to him. Yeah, and that for me in my head, that's when the credits rolled. My personal favorite Al Ewing number is when he sings "Creep" by Radiohead, but he sings it reversed. So it's you're a creep, you're a weirdo, you don't belong here. I'm so fucking special. And he sings it like a Tory minister, basically. So that's a fun. But I don't want to spoil any more of his jokes.
Someday somebody will write a book about him, just as a character.
He's good, honestly. Al's a wonderful person to know. Alex McCready notes, all the variant covers are so beautiful and well created. Thank you. Actually, we'll pick that in a second. Would there be a covers gallery if you ever get a deluxe hardcover? I can't imagine us not including the covers. Stephanie, yeah, I mean, like, I can't imagine not doing it. Stephanie, do you want to talk about like how you thought about? Because like early on, this is a confession. I think early on I said I didn't want to do all covers because we'd done them all the way through Wick Diff and it was a lot of work, you know.
Yeah.
And I was like, let's just stick to one cover and do it straight. And Stephanie, you were much more like, I want to do covers. I love cover, and I was like, and that was like, oh no, Stephanie loves it. You know, as a cover artist, you would. Do you want to talk about your thinking about how you selected, or like, because it wasn't just you selecting people, but it was mainly you were like the main force behind it, I think. Do you want to talk about how you did it?
Well, I how can I say this without sounding pretentious? My main quality in comics is to be mostly friendly and relatively unharmful. People usually like me. It's weird to say, but that's true. And so I have a huge collection of friends who happen to be also cover artists, and I just wrote them because it was really cool to do that. It's almost was fangirling in some way. So especially for some of them, like Bill Sienkiewicz, I would never have imagined someday to be able to hire Bill Sienkiewicz. Uh, that was insane for me. But okay, we didn't do it, but we even were in contact with John Ho for a while, who, for those who don't know, is the official illustrator for Tolkien. And he also happened to attend my school in Strasbourg. And this is how I got in touch with him. Like, oh, do you remember this teacher that we had in common? Like that was basically 20 years between his time in my school and mine. But it's the same. That was really cool.
He would have been awesome if we could have got him, but it never quite lined up.
It was time, where like if you remember, like he was like, okay, I can do that for February, and we were like, oh, but September is our deadline. Like, well, no.
We could have gone back and planned it more in advance. Like if we ever do a sequel, we'll be able to plan it properly. Actually, no, we planned this pretty well. Let's be fair.
Everything happened at the moment it had to.
Okay. Ramsey Hassan. Hello, Ramsey. What surprised you both on this journey? Did a character or story point go somewhere you didn't expect? Let's have a quick cheer for Ramsey, who actually did some amazing like sensitivity consultants, cultural consultants stuff on the book. So like thanks Ramsey, who is thanked in the book, in Bleed. So hooray. So I can't express words anymore. Steph, what surprised you? Because like obviously I normally know more than you do. I mean, like I put it in a big Bible, but no one ever reads the Bible. Like, so what bits of the story you're like, oh my god, this is happening? Because like some stuff did surprise me on the journey as well, obviously.
Which one surprised me most? I was surprised to be so attached to the Fool after a while, because I really thought I would that Ash would be my go-to character, because she's the main narrator, and I took more time to design her than the rest of the character. I grew attached to her very fast, but in the end, I was surprised to relate so much to the fool. Like, okay, I at first I really hated it. I hated the character, and suddenly I realized that maybe I hated it so much because we were so much alike too. That was
It's like it's often like seeing people like seeing part of you in someone who's worse than you is and like that's one of those kind of interesting things because it's a way of examining your weaknesses. Because somebody who's worse than you is like, okay, I'm not as bad as that, but I recognize some of the things that make them do it, and I think that's a growing experience because seeing yourself, I don't know. I'm speaking broadly. Talk there. I'm not quite sure I agree with myself. What surprised me? It's true because a lot of the stuff I knew, like I just didn't know how. I mean, it was a lot of my stuff was like minor things, like we introduced those dwarves in issue 4, and like they were just like people to talk to and give. They were literally someone to get drunk with and give a piece of fair gold to Angela. That's all they were for. And then and I thought it was a pretty good joke about calling, doing the Seven Dwarves meets the Endless joke. That was the joke as such. And then they just hung around and became really important and the backbone of like Chuck's plot. Like I'm not quite and it was I always think about the Elf Queen as well, who of course was a throwaway detail in issue 2, and not throwaway, but the real life person was more important. But the second cover was like, oh no, she's important now. Like there was a lot. The things that surprised me were the things where I had to respond to Stephanie's art and make it bigger. I mean, we joke like I don't know if the Die Compressed podcast because they're obsessed over the tiger guy from Little England, and like, oh yeah, if we ever did do a sequel, he's important.
Yes, of course. But to be honest, I actually listen to the podcast usually, and I put it. I remember that I put him in another scene without you asking because of their obsession with this.
I must admit, I think you sort of threw that on yourself because you did give it a really good design. So if you give anything a good design, immediately like that's basically the Boba Fett rule. You
Right.
stick Boba Fett is just a good design, and people go, oh right, they must be important. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Well, that's a lesson, but that's a good one. Every lesson is important, but some of them are difficult to admit. This one is a good one.
Yeah. Actually, occasionally some of the bits that surprised me were just how the elegant bits, like how Izzy and Chuck's arc dovetailed. Like the position they argue in issue 2, ethically, is the absolute opposite they argue in issue 18. And I don't want to like explicitly spoil it because I'm not quite sure how many people in the chat have actually read the book yet. But like there is that kind of like, and that was much more like, oh no, that's where they are now. That's just actually the characters. And for me, that's the joy. Part of the joy, as opposed to Wickdiv, which was like a machine. Die was like, I know these people, I know their struggles, I know what they're about, I know what questions I want to ask them. The specifics of how it came out, that was the joy and surprise, and it was really a delight.
It was a very organic work. I think maybe it was a bit my fault too, because Jamie is so sharp in his drawing. It's always so precise, and but me, I know I'm chaotic. I bring a lot of. I even don't know where I'm going most of the time. So maybe you reacted a bit to that too. I don't know.
I think like if I wanted to do like. I mean, I joked about it. Like, I was in the first issue. I wrote a grid, and you came back with the amazing slashed thing. And that was absolutely me. Realizing no grids. It doesn't matter if I write a grid. It won't change anything. It won't make any difference. To quote Newt from Aliens. But like also, I had to Wickdiv. I mean, so much of Die for me was not doing Wickdiv again. Like just and in every single way. And of course, you are completely different to Jamie, and that's absolutely what is the joy about being in comics for me. Is like you get to form bands, and the music you make together is about us, and and Clayton and Ryan and Chrissy and how we all came together. And I definitely don't think that's a feature, not a bug. I think. Yeah. Now, Julio, will Stephanie draw the next Eternal special? Her Circe will be killer. And now I agree with this, but I've deliberately not asked Stephanie to do it because I want Stephanie has things she should be drawing. So I'm completely and utterly like in the part of my head thinking, well, it'll be good, but no, I don't want to ask her in case she says yes.
Yeah, I can't say no. Don't ever ask me anything.
It's like, oh no. But honestly, like if we, actually the next Eternal special is at the moment, and it's really beautiful. It's coming together, and but like, I mean, down the line, if we ever have like an issue, we can do like it would be fun.
Yeah, in January or something. Right now, I'm like,
Yeah,
yeah, I'm
not
ready.
later than that. You still have something else to do. Yeah,
Yes, I do so
but
much.
I have something else to write for you though as well. So
That too.
yeah, Steve Dillon, Stephanie, do you have any interest in writing a book? I presume Sean means a comic, but it could be either.
Yeah, well, I always think about it. I mostly lose myself in work most of the time, and I never find the courage to do it. The thing is, when I started doing comics in France, I used to do the whole thing, writing and drawing. And the pressure was too much for me. I was like, I couldn't, I was 1 year late for my first comic because the pressure was literally too much. I would do anything beside working because it was way too scary. And after that, for a long time, and also because I was a very young artist, um, you know, for people who come to see you, it's always new for them. The book is new, but for you, it's an old book. After a year, it's an old book, uh, and you still have to go with their enthusiasm because you won't say, yeah, well, it's an oldie and I'm way better than that now. Because don't spoil their fun. They love it. Why would you
Mm,
spoil it? The pressure was too much. And I
mm.
think I'm a bit scared about it, about carrying a whole book. Maybe I should just write it,
You
you
should.
know.
Occasionally, writing something yourself is just good to do it, and allowing, just even allowing yourself to be bad. Like I've said, this is like the freedom of allowing yourself to be bad is important, and
Mm.
and that's how you learn in many ways. Because you don't have to publish it, but at the same time, it's
Sure.
like we've talked about this. I was like, you maybe should do like some short stories or something, and that
Hmm.
like And if we ever do die again, like doing little die short stories. But there's a question coming up about allowing other people to write die, and it's like it would make a lot of sense to you to do a playful vignette. If we did die again, you doing like a two short stories in the back or something.
Yeah.
I can't believe I'm saying because that's making you do more work again. Stop it, stop it. Well, that's the
Well,
biggest mistake you made in Die. 25-page issues.
actually,
It's like,
actually really wanted to write when I was younger. One of my teacher when I was maybe in high school or something, he was convinced that I would be a writer, and I was like, well, yeah, I'm not really sure about that. It never happened, but for a very long time, I was more of a writer than a painter. Especially because I was not very good at painting, but I really wanted to do this, so I just carried on. Well, it wasn't such a bad idea, but in the end, I'm pretty sure writing would be more healthy for me because I kill myself on pages.
right, it is easier. I mean, it's harder in different ways. Like, it really is harder, but the pure physical work is less. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I think I will maybe still doing for another 10 years or something, and then maybe try to switch. But for
I think
now,
it's,
I'm happy with drawing.
yeah.
I want to do shorts. Shorts will be nice. Especially, I was thinking about. We were talking with a friend. Oh yeah, so that's really a stupid idea. We were talking with my friends at the office, and we were like, "Oh, can you imagine a battle royale with all the leaders of the world, like with Kim Jong Un and Shinzo Abe, and with Trump and Lula
You
and
better not be giving people a story idea for free here, Stephanie, because I will literally like.
well, I won't do it anyway,
That's
but
not
that
the
would
point.
be
You
cool.
definitely won't do it now. It's like Actually, as I say, something you should consider trying, Stephanie, is just writing like Christian. Christian Ward. He obviously draws. He mainly draws comics for other people, but he writes. He mainly draws for other people, but he writes for other people. Declan does this too. Like you writing for someone else could be cool.
Yeah, I think yeah, especially if I do that kind of battle royale thing, definitely I won't draw that.
Yeah. See, that doesn't sound like your strength. Like, also crowd scenes would be awful. It's like it's hard work. Mark asks, Stephanie, will you be painting any of the original art for the Kickstarter? Will make good high-level rewards. Like,
Yes.
good. I was throwing that. I always thought like that's different. I always think you should sell the original art and keep all the money yourself rather than being part of something else. But that's a conversation we can have about other stuff anyway.
Sure. But I really want to, like, these days I really want to paint. I have a bit more time, and painting have been scarce last years, because basically it's faster to do it in. It's not so much faster to paint in digital, but the process before and after is longer. Like, basically, I do the sketches and then I print them and then I put them through the light box and trace them and then prepare the paper and like put in the first juice and then I start to paint. It takes me almost 6 hours or something just to be able to paint. So this 6 hour down the drain.
Yeah.
But now that I have a bit more time, I want to be able to paint a bit more.
Yeah. There's definitely an art assistant would help there, wouldn't it? That's work that can be. That is work. Jamie's had an art assistant. No, he hasn't had one recently, but he's definitely, when he was working traditionally, he always had an art assistant. That's always been fun work. Yeah.
A trainee.
I'm thinking about should I get an editorial assistant, because I could really, I literally Stephanie also, I double booked a meeting today, and that's not something I should be doing. Yes.
Yeah. Understand totally.
David Brother notes he's never seen a Gillen panel didn't end up hella personal, which I take as completely true. Like I have absolutely no. That's not true. I do have boundaries. I just don't have enough boundaries. Sean, not Steve Dillon. Kieron, which issue required the most research into things you've not read before? It was the Bronte issues. I never read any Brontes except for Wuthering Heights before Die.
Really?
So I only read Wuthering Heights, and everything else for all the Bronte stuff was me deliberately reading it for that. And that's I read more for Tolkien overall, I think, but I read more new stuff for the Brontes. Like I read various biographies and bits and pieces. But it's interesting because it's like Jane Eyre is like funny, and when I say it's funny in an awful bleak way. Like the whole there's a whole bit where like Jane Eyre is painting a picture of the woman that she thinks her love is going to go off with, who is so much better than her, and she's literally there making up how hot this other woman is. And it's like, Jane, calm down. Anyway. John's Comics with Kids, Journey of Ash through the series was so beautifully finalized in this volume. Thank you. What's the plan all along to sort of mirrors Ash's trajectory with that of the game itself? It's complicated. I mean, like I would say always along that the characters' journeys would dovetail with the world they're in, because the work that's in the game as well. It's like all the characters are facing their externalized challenges and natures, and so I knew that. But I didn't. But the specifics I maybe didn't know, because for basically the point of writing Ash was finding out Ash. Is going down the dungeon that is her and finding out like, okay, what can we say about her? So I always knew that's where we'd end up. But I didn't know what it would be, if it makes sense. I do like. I thought that issue 19 cover, Stephanie, is astounding again. I should say that again. Yeah. Broad question from Tom, which is good. I really like your icon, Tom. What is that? Tom, what comics are we enjoying now? Stephanie, you reading anything?
Oh no.
I hate this question. You see how I asked you first rather than me?
The thing is, people are always asking like artists, what are you reading? What is hot right now in comic books? To be totally brutally honest, for me, when I started doing comics for a living, I almost stopped reading them because it looked too much like work. I didn't enjoy them as much as I used to. So I don't really read a lot of comics these days.
It's like literally my brain is fried. Honestly, at 10 o'clock, my brain just goes, there are no comics other than yours. Not even yours. The thing is, I do actually tweet about stuff I'm reading quite a bit. I mean, at the moment, the fact I'm back at Marvel, quite, you know, I'm doing Eternals and I'm doing, I imagine Rich Johnson publishing, Kieron's doing Mumble for Marvel. Like, so I'm reading a lot of, and that takes a lot of space in terms of like me actually staying on top of various offices and just seeing what else is happening there. And it's fun because you just feel you do feel connected. I'll tell you something. I actually New Byrne came out this week. New Byrne's effing astounding. Obviously, when Chip told me about the high concept of it, which is basically the guy who like all the organized crime people call in to check who did the crime. So in other words, you know, when like one mafia guy whacks another mafia guy, how do you know it was him? How do we know the vendetta's going to be? We call on this guy, and he'll work out who killed who, and now they can all, you know, whack each other correctly. And it's just, you know, that's just really sharp, and it says a lot about like what does justice mean. You know, it talks about how corrupt systems operate, and it's just a really good plot. You know what I mean? Like that's like I could explain that to my mum. In fact, I did explain it to my mum, and she was like, "Oh yeah, that makes sense." You know what I mean? It's like it's just meaty. I finished off actually talking about Al Ewing, I finished off Immortal Hulk, which is astounding. You know, like
good.
It's good. It's like I mean, everything around it with the artist is heartbreaking. For every single reason. But that's a lot. God, there's more. There's more books than just those two. I mean, like the Reckless books are great, obviously. I've read a lot more comics than this recently. I mean, Stray Dogs trade came out actually like recently. Stray Dogs from Image was delightful. It's basically, you know, criminal meets actually, it's Stray Bullets meets it's Stray Bullets meets All Good Dogs Go to Heaven, you know. And it's just charming, really charming. I'm really glad it's selling. I saw it. It was topping the charts. It topped the sales charts this month, I think, for trade, and that's like I'm really glad it's found an audience in trade. It's really awesome. I'll probably come back and think about something else. I'll end shouting more later.
Own all these books?
Yeah, I mean, or at least like kind of like people send like the fact I do tweet about books means I actually go and, you know, I like people send me PDFs quite regularly, and I try to read as much as I can because, you know.
Cool.
But even though I'm not reading as, you know, I should be reading a lot more is the thing as well.
Yeah, you know, for me, one of the other reasons why I don't buy so many books is I moved a lot this last years. I moved maybe at least 7 or more times. Each time I had to move books. My arms were covered in bruises. I'm like, okay, I'm not doing this anymore. I tried not to buy. Obviously, I buy some books, but I really do the minimum. They are too heavy.
I buy a lot digitally, you know.
Yeah,
I try to some stuff I just treat as disposable. You know what I mean? Like it's just kind of like I'll buy this and give it away because, you know, it is, you know, it's a business expense. Also, I mean, everyone's going about Tinian. You know, Tinian had a really great year, and the House on the Lakes, astounding work, annoyingly good work, in fact, I would say. Yeah, that's one. I'll come back to some more later bit. Mark says, when talking about the genesis of Die, you said you were joking about the D&D cartoon, but then came with an element that made it a story you wanted to tell. What was it now the series is over? I'm not quite sure what Mark's referencing. That's in specifically what I said. But what I think that we were joking about it, well, the joke was, what are they doing now? In other words, what would it be like if they were all 40-somethings or 50-somethings, as it would be in the case of the D&D cartoon? In other words, the bit we were joking about was actually just what ended up becoming Die. Once again, you know, Die seems custom made for an anthology companion like Old Guard Tales Through Time. And it's nice to invite your peers to play. A McKelvey Neo story or Ewing tackling God Binders would be awesome. Actually, McKelvey Neo is literally the thing that makes most sense, Julio. Like, it's just like, I've been thinking that myself for a long time. Like I said earlier, like Stephanie, I think Stephanie should write and draw something, or maybe just write, but depending how she feels. In many ways, the RPG is also a weird invitation to people. Oh yeah, you can make your own Die stories. And weirdly, Al and Jamie are both playing in my current Die campaign at the moment. And Jamie's playing a dictator, Al is playing a fool. So maybe I'll lure them in that way.
That's really cool.
Stephanie, who would you like to see write or draw a Die story?
I would like to see some manga artists doing things with Neo mostly. I think Neo story with a manga style would be really cool. I would love it. Yeah, a black and white stories mostly. But Finoto would be great. I think I really love his work. Marguerite. Well, of course, I'm like, I'm gonna just bring all my friends.
Yes, what's the point if you can't just like play with your friends? I guess it's RPGs. It's family.
The guy I consider my master is Mario Alberti, right? So of course I can totally imagine Mario Alberti doing anything, absolutely anything, but mostly armor things. Like he's so good with drawing armors.
What do you wish you were better at drawing?
Crowds.
I'm sorry?
Crowds, like lots of people.
Oh, crowds. Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry, I get it. So I thought you said roads, and I thought you do fine roads.
Crowds. I'm bad with.
This is the funny thing, of course, is like I think we said this before, but like when we first started working together or met, neither of us really understood each other. Like I think I understood you slightly better, but I was just mysterious. And now we are better. Like we're here.
But I really think your pronunciation changed because when I met you, say your A's were all over the place. It was just so weird. Yeah, like I asked you a question and you answered like I can't, and I was like, what is he saying? You don't do that anymore.
Maybe I've grown, which is excellent.
On my ears or something.
JW asks about the how much visibility of the Die translations, how much involvement in the translators do you get? Like it's variable in that way. In that we sign off on like designs, we sign off on like what it looks like, and and occasionally translators do. Yeah, I mean translators do translate, or other translators do contact us and ask questions occasionally, but really it's that kind of.
You remember that in the French edition we had the surprise to see that he translated Glass Town by Vadopolis.
Yeah, it's complicated. I mean, it's one of the complications is, I mean, that speaks to actually the dangers of one of the really hard things in the translations, especially in the case of my books, because like stuff I write, especially create our own stuff, is dense, and stuff that's important becomes important in like five series' time. So like like Wicked and Divine, the word it all hangs around the word okay. You know what I mean? Like and the word okay in English is interesting because it means okay can mean I'm good. It can mean things are actually just kind of average, or it can mean lots of like. And words Wicked really becomes the meditation on the concepts of the word okay, up to the point where I mean, what is the last volume is called okay, and that doesn't translate. That's a really hard thing because it's a very specific word. So like various translations have wrestled with it, and more importantly, translators don't know circa episode 1 the word okay is the most important word in the whole series. And like and that's just really hard.
Yeah, especially a translation is never neutral. People will bring their things with themselves, and two translators can totally bring two different feelings about the same book. So we don't know, especially like we could know with French editions, but like for Italian, or which one did we approve? Like a Turkish one or something? We're totally out of the loop. Like even if we can check, like there is nothing we can really know about it.
Yeah, it's definitely like, because there's a line early on that there was a line early on when I was researching Tolkien, and basically Tolkien basically says, like, I can't understand why people can't be bothered to learn enough Old English to read Beowulf. And it's like, and he doesn't mean in a mean way or a gay. It's like, and he's obviously somebody who's really good at languages, so he doesn't understand why it's difficult for people, maybe. But I felt sad, like maybe I should learn maybe I should learn enough Old English to read Beowulf, because and it's like, and I love Dostoevsky, like especially in my 20s, I read a lot of Dostoevsky, and I'm like, I've never read Dostoevsky. All I've read, as you said, is people's translations, people's impression of him, and like they're all transformation. I'm like, and Chrissy, the editor of Die, she's bilingual. Her mum's Italian. No, she's by nationality. Her mum's Italian, so she's all very interested. And she's a poet. One of my favourite poems by Chrissy is a poem called "Lost," which is her her basically taking a bunch of translations of the first stanza of Dante's Inferno and rearranging them, and just and therefore showing what translation does. And I've just Googled it up, so I'm going to read it. Are people okay with me reading them some poetry?
I am.
Excellent. Let's go for this. Chris is going to be horrified, but if she wanted to stop me, should have come to the chat. It starts with it in Italian, which I will try. Actually, I've been learning Italian in Duolingo. So, nel mezzo del cammin di nostra vita, mi ritrovi per una selza oscura, che la dritta vi era smarrita. At one point, midway on our path in life, when I had journeyed half our life's way, halfway down the road we have to go, I come to in a gloomy wood. In the midway of this mortal life, midway upon the journey of our life, midway along the journey of our life, I came around and found myself now searching through a dark wood, the right way blurred and lost. I found me in a gloomy wood astray. I found I was in a dark forest. I found myself within a forest dark. I found myself within a shadowed forest. I found myself obscured in a great forest, bewildered, and I knew I had lost the way. Halfway through the story of my life, I woke to find myself in a dark wood, gone from the path direct, for I had wandered off from the straight path, for I had strayed from the straight path, for I had lost the path that does not stray. Midway in our life's journey, the straightforward pathway had been lost. And Chrissy, she's going to murder me, but like Chrissy's books are available from Blood Axe publisher. But like, you know what I mean? Like,
I was just imagining if somebody was taking the chat like in the middle of this. It was like, what's happening right now?
Yeah, it's all like we've gone from personal into poetry. It's like
It's beautiful.
No, I love that poem because it's like exactly as you say. It's like if you see all those lines together, you realise, wait. This is all the different ways of taking this, or like not even all the ways. These are some ways people have took it, and now we can see the differences by each other. And if you apply that to every single thing you've ever read in translation, you go, oh right, I've just been looking at, I've been looking at a fractal, a diffusion. Anyway,
your Italian accent is terrible.
All my accents are terrible. This is the problem. When I'm actually GMing, I don't do accents because they're all bad and they just drift randomly. I'm just not good. I mean, like, to be fair, I haven't ever tried to learn it, but like, yeah. Dave Brother goes, was Die Again a turn of phrase or a good title for the next one? Possibly both. Tom Byrne goes, when will we hear about both your next projects?
Well, we've been talking about it for like 2 hours now.
Yeah. Like this stuff, like, we'll get there.
Yeah.
JP says, following Dice since it was released. Oh, wrong one.
Thank you.
Thank you, though, JP. Oh, no, I've scrolled. So basically, it automatically scrolled and moved as I was clicking. When are we coming to Brazil, says JP? I must admit, like, at the moment, I'm not doing any cons. It's like Stephanie's doing C2E2 next year.
Yeah.
But, like, I mean, I've never done Brazil. I think I turned down a con once because it was just too busy. I would love to go to Brazil.
Well, me too.
Yeah. Will there ever likely be a hardcover for the first 20 issues? Hopefully is the answer. I mean, image books traditionally like a year to 18 months after the trade that's when I'll be waiting. So maybe not for like 2 years yet, almost. But like we'd love to do one. Like I want to do if we had but at the same time, it's a way off if we have not talked about it at all, have we, Stephanie?
No. But if Image doesn't do it, maybe we'll do like a tutorial online for how to do it yourself and sew the pages together.
I'm a big fan. The do-it-yourself approach is pretty cool. JW, how much has digital and the pandemic shift to digital impacted your thoughts on art and layout? For example, the power of the double-page splash versus the same thing struck down on an iPad screen.
Not at all.
Not Stephanie says not all. I'll say that's what we were thinking about when we went into Wictive, and we thought about it a lot because, like, Young Avengers, when me and Jamie did there, we thought that was going to be our swan song to splash pages. You know what I mean? Like that. This is it. Like, and then we would sort of stop doing it in Wictive because we thought it'd be over. In effect, digital sales haven't increased as much as you might have hoped they would, and therefore they're not the prime. Unless you're actually just reading on digital, it's not the primary form.
I think people were looking for an excuse to go out, and going to the comic book store was as good as an excuse as anything. Especially in France, it was some of the few shops that were allowed to be open. So people would click and collect like that.
Yeah. I was like, and it's true. I was actively surprised by how good physical comic sales were during the pandemic. For example, but I presume no one would make any money, but it's done really well. Ramsey's had a good idea. Friend of Elsa, so a collaboration for both a die short would be great. I agree. Elsa's amazing. So I'm just making sure because I want to probably wrap up at about past. Yeah, Stephanie. Yeah. So if anyone's got any last minute questions, I will lob them in the chat. JP goes. Oh, JP was a translator. Thank you very much, JP. But I think JP speaks. Translators don't like to bother unless they need to. But it's they're good at their jobs is the thing. That's why I think you have to have faith in your people's ability to do their job as well. Sean mentioned you briefly brought up sensitive readers early on, but how has your overall experience of them been? Lovely. Were there any plot points that were significantly changed because of them? Not really. The way I'd say it is it was about how we did it rather than what we would do specifically, because we were basically a lot of the stuff was when you're aware you're going into an area which is fraught, you want to make it as safe as possible, and especially with certain plot lines, it was less that what I wanted to say and how I wanted to say it. That's probably the best way of putting it. I think the better way I say it's all additive, because the conversation it was always what needed to be more, as in this is my response to this, something you want to bring out more, as in something which is there, or something that is not, something that's either there and needs to be more, or something that is not there and needs to be up a bit, as in here's an important response that's too low down in the mix. You know what I mean? And that's why that's the kind of it's just made the work better is the better way. Is it hasn't changed the course of it. It's added to the course it was going, and that's at least how I see it.
I think the only time it really influenced anything on my side was when I was doing the flashbacks from Angela, and we discussed about how the setup of the office should be as someone with only one arm, like how she places the thing around, like to type and everything. So that was.
I think Angela was definitely the one that impacted most Stephanie's choices. Because like the physicality of Angela is important. Obviously, like, you know, somebody who has one limb when we're in the real world. So like, that was definitely the one where there was like I always think that the first change that that was done in due to a sensitivity reader was in that opening spread in issue 1, and it was like Angela should be looking at her hand. Which is really like I must be, and it's weird because it's like that's something I was thinking anyway. You know, I was like, it's a bit, and I was thinking, you know, but I wasn't going to tell Stephanie to redraw it because, you know, that's not what you would do. And that was much more like, you know, no, this is right, and it gives, oh no, this is something we should really be thinking about. So it's like that's in some ways what I mean by additive in that way. People being very, very. I'll definitely tell everyone's being very kind about the Chrissy's poetry. Not my reading of Chrissy's poetry though. Joking. That was terrible. But I will pass on to everyone Chrissy's.
Chrissy's awesome.
She's so good. Honestly, her she's got 2 full collections out. One called Bear, one called Low, both available for Blood Axe, and they're amazing work. What would make for a good die to?
Well, I think the one who won't grow too old is the unfolded dice, of course.
It's good. I've seen some people do a good. There was at least one good unfolded dice linked to us on Twitter like a few weeks ago, and it's really good. It's really good.
Especially you can customize it as you will. You know, you can just use the frame and put your own. Like I've seen at least one doing. What did she draw inside? Was it a mermaid? I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, it was really very beautiful. Oh, my answer is like my broad tattoos are about yourself. You know what I mean? Like, so I could not tell anybody else what tattoo to get for themselves. So it's like, no, whatever speaks to yourself is what a good die tattoo is for you. And the idea that anyone, you know,
I was just thinking about the technicalities. Like basically, it's easier, especially with my style, who's very organic. Finding a tattooist who is able to not mess it up while copying it is very difficult. But the frame is very clean, and you can put whatever you want inside and still die. And most of the tattooists won't mess it up.
Yeah, that is true. I was being distracted by chat in there. Sorry about that, Stephanie. If we're heading towards the end, so what class would you guys be if we were trapped in die? What would you be, Stephanie?
Well, of course, I'm already the fool. It would just be like an ongoing thing for me.
I just think I'm probably the fool as well, so we're fighting over that D6. It's like my fundamental Labrador nature would take over.
I cannot be two fools in the same team, though, so... I love Godbinders, too. But no, Neos. Yeah, Godbinders, Neos, you can do things every day. Like Godbinders, you have to find the right time to ask because it's going to cost you something. Technically, it still costs you something if you're a Neo, but you know.
Yeah, I was like, I found like I'm sort of sitting there thinking about have I got another answer apart from fool. I reckon I found myself thinking, you know, be the emotion knight. I mean, I'm not sure which emotion it would be, but like, I'd literally don't have enough time for me to go into my kind of Michelangelo, Raphael, Leonardo model of creativity. Have I ever done this rant at you? I must have. I'm actually going to do the short version of this rant, and I've done this on Twitter, not Tumblr before, and I've become weirdly obsessed over it.
Okay.
I was in a bar like 2004 in Washington DC, and I was on a press trip. I used to be a games journalist, and I was chatting to somebody who was someone like political in Washington. It was just like random bar talk, and I think he was talking about people using World of Warcraft as a modern golf game. You know, as in like, people they were using it as a way to socialize. And of course, in 2004 or whatever, this was fairly new. But he told me this theory, and his theory that basically there's three sorts of creative people. And the three sorts of creative people are Michelangelo. Michelangelo is about art as a conversation with God.
Okay.
This is about wrestling with your passions. This is somebody who is emotionally committed to the, to the degree. This is about really wrestling with like the biggest serious stuff. You are absolutely 100% committed. That's one guy. The other person is Leonardo. Leonardo is about the ideas. Leonardo will start a million projects and probably finish about 4 of them. Leonardo is like instinct. And like, and these are real polls because those two guys hate each other. I mean, the story he told in the pub, and it's not quite true because I've researched this, but like the story he told was basically, they were working in a church at the same time, and like Michelangelo's really working on this fucking project over here, and in the far corner, Leonardo's effing off to the pub every lunchtime, having drinks, not spending any time there. And it gets to the point where Michelangelo throws Leonardo against the wall, goes, "Take it fucking seriously," like. So art as ideas, art as passion. And then the third corner is Raphael. Nice guy, paints pretty pictures, not a lot going on upstairs. Which I love that story. But like the thing and I thought about this a lot because what this is really about, this is an idea as created by someone who's clearly thinks themselves of a Leonardo. And Leonardo's are always kind of envious of the Michelangelos, and also because the Michelangelos have something which the Leonardos don't have, whilst the Raphaels have something the Leonardos look down on. And what the Raphaels really are in this metaphor are craft. This is basically like art, capital A, art, passion, versus ideas versus craft. And I think creators, it doesn't really work by pushing the thing around the dial, but you can definitely imagine levels. If you're like a D&D class, it's like, oh yeah, I've taken 3 levels of Michelangelo, 2 in Leonardo, but 7 in and I'm like, yeah, and 7 in Raphael, because like they're really good creators Raphael's effing Raphael. But there's some people who are, let's choose someone really good. Brian K. Vaughan. I think Brian K. Vaughan is towards the Raphael corner. He's craft. I don't think he's wrestling with God. I don't think he's about the Morrison corner, shall we say, which is Leonardo. I think he's telling really good stories, and he believes good stories are important. And that's what Raphael's really about, craft. Where did I go this? Anyway, where am I on that corner? I always think I'm more Leonardo, but everyone I've ever told this story to has said, "Oh no, you're Michelangelo." So Michelangelo is an emotion knight, and that answers the question, which is very long. So
I'm pretty sure I'm a Raphael.
You're not that good, right? Stephanie Hand compares herself to Raphael. No, I would say you're complicated. I think you are more. The point of my system, it is more complicated than that. But you're flighty. You know what I mean? Like you said, you're chaotic, and I'm thinking like, you want to pursue stuff. So I always put you Raphael, Raphael Leonardo, like the fact you're always trying stuff and pushing and playing. But I think you
honest, I compare myself to Miyamoto Musashi.
Of course you are. Anyway, I think that's an excellent thing. Shall we end now, Stephanie? Actually, Stephanie, have you got anything else to say? Because I literally have done a 5-minute rant about fucking Raphael again. Sorry.
No, that was actually very cool. Like I love this story. I think in this triangle there is something in the middle. Somebody who hides in the center, and you just forgot about it, but you knew it was there all the time.
Honestly, I prefer the idea as being RPG classes, as in the idea of taking levels and skill points, because I don't think they're necessarily antagonistic.
What a very insidious emotion would be for an emotion knight is envy. I think.
Envy.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, what would not. Yeah. I'm not sure what emotion it would be. It's probably, I can imagine myself a grief night. That'd be pretty depressing. I mean, Wickdiv's era me was a grief night. You know what I mean? Like that was all. I mean, grief night is about turning like grief and the sadness and anger into power, and that's kind of what like Wickdiv was. Maybe I used to be an emotion night and I got better.
And I'm still the fool.
You are mortal. Stephanie, this has been delightful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for everything. Thanks everyone watching. You're all amazing. And we'll do this again if there's anything other reason. This is doing these kind of like short, like a quick like thing like this is just quite a fun thing to do when a book's over, and it's been a journey.
Well, we should do that more often. At least to keep in touch.
We should.
Yeah, I have your address. I will just send you random Amazon packages.
Excellent. I know. It's the best of always send members of your team gifts to each other. I think that's always like if I was ever going to do like a proper writer's guide to how to be a comic creator, it's like encourage gift giving between your team, because frankly everyone likes gifts.
That's true. It was delightful.
See you, everyone. Bye everyone.